to go? Cool. Someone want to close that door quickly? Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining our panel today on revolutionizing the insurance industry. I'll be your moderator today. My name is Alex Calderon. I'm a managing director with SIA Partners. We are a management consulting firm based out of Paris, France, with offices here in the States and building a presence here in the States as well. If you want to know more about me or SIA Partners, you can hop out our booths right outside the room actually here. Have a great panel set up today with 4 awesome panelists and leaders in the insurance industry. So I will kick it over to you guys for some quick intros and then we'll jump into it. Trina?
Hi, I'm Trina Bowser. I am a client account lead at Accenture. I'm within the insurance practice based out of Boston, Mass. Used to live here in Charlotte. I was part of MetLife. I was head of strategy for MetLife's direct-to-consumer business and lived in Charlotte for many years, so it's good to be back. It's good to see how much Charlotte's grown.
Hi, I am Josh Levine. I'm the founder and CEO at Cake & Arrow. We are an experience design and innovation agency, and we work exclusively with the insurance industry, like my friend Tom over here. Essentially what we do is we're helping them uncover new opportunities through behavioral research and then design products and services, digital products and services that are rooted in those needs. I personally come from a design background. There probably don't associate the insurance industry with an art school graduate, but basically, our mission as a company is to kind of help the industry embrace new mindsets, like the designer mindset, and hopefully make some change and do good things.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Tom Parsons. I've been in the insurance industry for about 20 years or so. Starting off on the carrier side for a number of years, mainly within the Lloyd's of London market. So working across a number of functions from actuarial, underwriting, portfolio management, reinsurance placement and such. So I work now within a wholesale brokerage firm, Amwin. So I work as head of digital strategy. So I'm in that position where I'm constantly trying to evaluate what we buy, what we license, and what we build. For a number of years, we've been building a lot of our own in-house technology as we look to serve the independent agent and make that connection with our carrier partners.
Good afternoon, Martin Wall. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Merit Life. We're a startup greenfield life insurance company headquartered here in Charlotte. As an old manager once told me, you don't choose insurance, insurance chooses you. So I was lured into the industry about 13 years ago. I joined AXA Equitable, and I was there for about 13 years. And recently moved from New York, so I'm still working on my y'alls. So if anyone has any tips, please let me know. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Real quick, too, I forgot to mention, if everybody has the Cvent app on their phones, I think everyone should for registration and all that. But that's how we're going to be handling the Q&A portion today. So if you guys have questions throughout the discussion, just enter them there. I will probably be fidgeting with the iPad right here, approving questions and making sure we're getting lined up for that session. I know we're running a little bit behind today, so I'll try to move us along and leave the last 5 or 10 minutes for the Q&A session and kind of let it flow as it goes. So I will kick us off with the first question here. How has technology transformed the insurance industry in recent years, and what are some key innovations that have significantly impacted the sector? Trina, we'll kick this one to you first.
Sure. Maybe even before we delve into kind of current state, it may be interesting just to kind of level set on the insurance industry as a whole. If you think about it, the ability, as we all know, is the ability to identify rate and price risk. That hasn't really changed. And in fact, the way you go about that really hasn't changed that much in the last 40 years. The fact that a broker sits down at a table, writes up a proposal, and sends it in, and somebody keys in the information, and maybe sends it offshore to rekey the same information, and then maybe bind and book it within 8 weeks, and then hope that there's not a claim, really hasn't changed, but for the fact that email is used to communicate versus fax machines or hand delivery. And then even when you think about the actual use of data, so insurance carriers have always had tons of data, hundreds of years worth of data, but the ability to capture, cleanse, and use that data has really been a challenge. So not a lot has changed in that regard either. So what has changed? You know, we were talking about 5 years ago, like InsurTech 101, disruption. So there were new channels of distribution, a lot of flurry of startups, InsurTechs, and a focus on how to disrupt the industry. And Accenture did a survey, and it was really the first of its kind, meaning that we do it like every 5 or 6 years, where we did the survey in 2007 and then again in 2013, and there was a definite uptick in where underwriters, we survey about 600 underwriters across major carriers, and in 2013 they definitely said there were new tools, there were new technologies, and the ability to underwrite had improved. We did the survey again last year, and in fact there was a significant drop-off in the responses from underwriters who said that in fact their workload has become more complex due to the number of tools and applications and niche solutions. And in fact, about 40% of their workload is still very administrative. So in terms of innovation today, like if you think about the rise of InsurTechs and technologies and then how it has landed us to the position we are today, it's really a couple of things. So the ability to straight through process and quickly underwrite, especially in the personal lines, has definitely improved. But commercial lines, especially specialty insurers, have really still struggled with the ability to underwrite risks because risks are different, the sources of data are different, and now the use of AI is definitely, hopefully, going to improve that, but we're still at the very much at the cutting edge. But I'd love to be able to hear what others think about where we are today.
Sure. For me, the big thing that's changing the kind of dynamic of the sector, particularly through the lens of insurance, is the emergence of ecosystems, particularly the past few years. And the reason I bring this up is traditionally insurance is a very insular company, right? And I think what ecosystems are doing, and it's extremely healthy, is it's forcing the insurance industry to kind of remove themselves from the equation and not just see themselves as an insurance industry, but a part of something bigger. And the beauty of ecosystems, and we all know this as customers, is it is pulling together multiple platforms, multiple services, all in the spirit of making life easier for us. And that's a hard thing, but a healthy thing for insurers to kind of, like I said, remove themselves and really reevaluate the value prop to see do they fit in these various journeys. And I think there's some amazing things happening there.
Yeah, I love a number of the points as I think through, how cloud computing has made all of this so much cheaper, whether it be the quantity of data that can be stored. As I think at the beginning of my career, you almost threw everything away. It was too expensive to keep it. Whereas now, in terms of an insurance carrier's first-party data, typically its claims, is far richer. The kind of cost of acquiring third-party data, storing it, but then also the cost of being able to analyze all of this data to be able to kind of come up with new kind of predictive insights, and then thinking how all of this can be consumed in different ways, whether it be microservices pulled into an ecosystem like what you said. The whole experience of putting things together and being able to kind of market and sell has quite changed as I've seen certainly over the last kind of 20 plus years. So all these things I think are just going to be increasing and becoming even more consumable for the end customer.
Yeah, I was going to mention the same thing about cloud computing, and Josh talked about ecosystems. And when you think about, or at least when I've been thinking about cloud computing and the rise of like web service and API calls, it's easier to stitch together the ecosystem that Josh was referring to, and also work with the rise of all these insurtech and fintech partners out there that focus on data collection, underwriting, making better decisions, et cetera. But one of the other things I've seen too is like the rise of no-code and low-code platforms, and I think it's a little bit of a misnomer. I kind of like always using Salesforce as an example. There's still some sort of code, but maybe the coding that required, you don't need a high-level engineering degree, and I think it somewhat democratizes the ability for individual companies and the people that work there to learn that on their own time and have less of a high-tech type of worker requirement where, as we all know, I don't think a lot of recent graduates are waking up and saying, I'm going to go into the life insurance industry. You know, they're going to big tech and some of the other more attractive opportunities compared to, you know, boring life insurance. I like it though, but so.
Yeah, and I think it's a great viewpoint on kind of where the insurance industry is today. And I think a lot of this discussion will be around where the insurance industry is going. And how you do start to attract that level of talent. You were talking about how you do revolutionize it and bring it in, whether that's using different tools, digital platforms, and technology to kind of bring it into the 21st century. Our next question, and kind of leading into that, is how do we approach innovation in insurance in a way that is practical and sustainable? Josh, we'll start with you.
Sure. I mean, to me, for an innovation to be practical and sustainable, it has to solve a real human problem, right? And, you know, I think what won't work is, you know, the continuous urge to digitize existing processes, so, you know, or even just jumping right into technology without any like real intention. So again, what we see a lot is, particularly now in terms of filling a need, is that the gap between customer expectations, is essentially what we're all talking about, and the ability for an insurer to meet them is growing. Unlike other industries, I can't speak on behalf of financial services, but I think insurance is behind. And you know, you start to question, all right, what is it you can do? And you know, for me and for us, and again, I can explain it through my lens of what makes innovation practical. You know, it starts with, you know, to me, understanding who you're solving the problem for. So, you know, how do you do that in terms of approaches? We're firm believers in human-centric, human-centered design and design thinking, which, as some of you might know, it's taking the customer and putting them up front, making them first. You know, as you know, traditionally, insurance, and you know this, you've been around longer than I have in the industry, insurance has always focused on the business of insurance and the transaction, and there's been very little, sometimes if any, attention being put towards what drives a human being to make that transaction. So human-centered design is flipping this whole process, you know, on its head, essentially, and saying, let's start with understanding the customer. So a couple of different ways that kind of manifests into a process is you know, in terms of these, and you've seen some of these, Tom, which is find ways to integrate the user or the customer early on in the process. And you know, the goal here is to figure out what is the real problem, right? Before you jump into solutioning, you see it all so much of, you know, jump into the greatest technology, AI, whatever it might be, there's amazing stuff out there. But that isn't sustainable because what you end up finding is that you didn't understand what the problem was to begin with and you make that commitment. The other I'd love to see more of that's sustainable is that when you do know the problem, validate. When you do your solutions before you spend 2 years and come up with a big roadmap, go out there and quickly prototype and put ideas out there regardless of the fidelity and see how people react. And I think everyone here has a story we can talk about right now of a company that spent a couple of years, a lot of resources, a lot of investment on a product that felt right but ultimately didn't resonate. That isn't scalable or practical and it's quite expensive. So, you know, to me, human-centered design is a way to de-risk innovation, right? You get to increase the odds by knowing what the problem is.
Yeah, I love this point, and for those who don't know, Josh and I, we didn't know we were going to be on this panel together, but we do use cake and arrow a lot at our firm and really appreciate everything Josh has said. Maybe to add a few extra points, I really love the idea of that customer kind of centered design, really focusing on what the customer needs. One of the things I really appreciate is kind of some of the variants of, I guess, lean startup methodology, where you kind of start off with that hypothesis, you know, this button needs to be green or something. So your hypothesis is that, you know, we're going to get 20% extra clicks if we make this green. And then really starting, let's build it, let's test it out. Like as Josh was saying, let's not think about it for 2 years, let's maybe throw it out to a cohort of our users, let's see how they interact with it. And then having that process of measuring, right, let's see how many clicks we had versus what we had before, and then having the learning phase at the end where we, you know, have that innovation accounting, right? And then the determination, do we proceed, do we continue, or do we pivot? You know, it doesn't need to be green, it should be yellow or whatever. And doing that very, very rapidly to be able to really understand, you know, what the consumer needs as you go along that journey, rather than these really long cycles of kind of debate and kind of, you know, dark room thinking, actually getting out there and working with the customer. Another thing which has been fantastic working with Josh's team is kind of interviewing our customers and really getting close to them and really being very thoughtful in trying to understand the way that they think, the way that they act. So all these things are just so important as we think about, you know, how do we make these things sustainable and actually really usable for our customers.
Just to bring, I was just going to say, to bring a kind of a life and annuity perspective, you know, probably 10 to 20 years ago, there was no roles at life insurance companies that were like UX designers. Now I feel like UX design, customer experience are really important now. And, you know, the old adage is like insurance is sold and not bought. And I think that's starting to change the last couple of years, maybe more than the last couple of years. We're a consumer-driven society, and what I always like to say is the playbook or how we should be interacting with our customers is not being written by our industry, it's being written by the Amazons of the world. And people expect to have a robust, holistic digital experience through their app. They want to be able to have that omni-channel, multi-access communication. If I want to talk to someone, I can call them. If I want to talk to a chatbot, I can do that. If I want to email or text, et cetera, I can do that as well. And so before, I kind of always thought that, you know, insurance, you know, there's a handful of insurance carriers. If you want life or annuity products, you go to one of those, and there wasn't much of a choice, and you had to deal with their website, deal with the experience that they gave you. And I think that's changed a lot with the rise of new entrants, perhaps My Employer Now, Lemonade as an example as well, that are kind of rewriting some of those previous assumptions that people don't care about the website, people don't care about customer service. And actually what I've seen just in the last couple of years of my career is, from a financial advisor standpoint, there's a lot of choices out there. So they're going to sell annuities and life insurance products with the carriers that are easy to do business with. Carriers that have digital e-apps, which sounds kind of crazy in 2023, but it still exists. People who have higher impact touch points with humans. So not always people just want to email and correspond to people digitally. They want to be able to pick the phone and talk to someone as well. So I think it's really interesting concept of how it's kind of the user experience has kind of been kind of more front and center, at least in the life and annuity side.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add is to kind of differentiate the customer. So I think a lot of what we were referring to is on the personal lines and direct to consumer versus on the commercial, large commercial line, who the customer is really needs to be identified. Is it the broker? Is it the agent? Or is it the end customer? Is it the person who owns 5 different car dealerships or fleets of cars? That journey for those customers or those endpoints can look very different, and the experience can be very different for them in terms of how they buy and think about their insurance process or the journey to acquire. And then even part of when you think about on the commercial side, most recently, the experience has been influenced by a lot of new risks. You think about all the environmental issues that are affecting, I mean, the smoke in New York this week, the fires. So the increase of environmental fires, earthquakes, cyber risk is very real for a lot of companies that they just don't know how to even understand, yet alone insure themselves against. So understanding what those customers are dealing with on the commercial side in their purchase journey versus the broker who themselves may not even understand, especially in the cyberspace, what they're selling, can be very different. And you need to kind of, when you innovate, think about those experiences.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear how an industry like the insurance industry is kind of just coming into the game of really listening to customer feedback and helping that drive the future. Martin, this next one's for you. What are the biggest challenges and obstacles that insurance companies face when integrating new technologies into their existing systems and processes?
I guess my perspective I can bring both from like a legacy carrier, my prior employer, and a greenfield carrier where I'm at now. And I think one of the bigger obstacles I've seen is just legacy infrastructure. I was actually reading an article today about MetLife that noted that they have 150 legacy systems. You know, from the time they were started back, whatever it was, 1800s, all the acquisitions they made, 150 legacy systems. That's insane. And they're probably all running different languages, and probably half the people aren't even working there anymore that they actually know the system. So I saw that at my, working at the legacy incumbent carriers. How do you get data out of the system? How do you extract data to derive insights? And, we didn't even necessarily have the right people that could go into those systems to get the data that we need. So you have to go to a consultant that knows COBOL, if you even know what that is. It sounds like a punch card type of programming language. That was a joke. And they get you the data. And so like that's kind of one of the biggest obstacles I've seen is just the legacy infrastructure. A lot of the time, as you all know, it's like, why don't you convert it onto a new platform? Like just the economics just don't work out. I mean, these are usually low touch policies and whatnot that can last, especially on the life insurance side, 10, 20, 30 years. So so that's the problem. How can we kind of think about it and fix it? I don't know if it could ever be fixed, but we can maintain it using some of what Josh was talking about around the ecosystem. Can we build platforms on top of it that can extract a lot of that data to derive various insights from? But I think that's going to be an issue that us as an industry, especially in the life and annuity side where our products are just so much longer dated than the PNC side, something we're going to have to continue dealing with and figure it out. And hopefully, big tech and some of the larger other consulting companies can help us think through it.
Well, I have one for you too. My client, so as a client account lead, I own Accenture's relationship for all the work we do across strategy, consulting, technology, and ops for that carrier. So for one of my clients who's the top 5 carrier, 6,000 systems and applications within their space. Not all of them legacy, so it'd be interesting to kind of understand how many of them are legacy, but 6,000. And when you think about the legacy applications, many of them were built for regulatory purposes, green screen, very structured, not really user-friendly at all. They weren't intended to be user-friendly. But I think one of the things to think about as you're working with a carrier who has such a vast number of systems and legacy systems is to be able to provide a solution that isn't niche. What I see amongst a lot of my clients right now is they're looking for ecosystem partners, people who can partner with other providers, solution providers, to provide a holistic solution end to end. As I mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of niche players, which has just caused more complexity in the space. So they're looking for people who can come in and say, yes, I have a solution, but I've joined hands with 2 other solution providers, and together we can help solve the bigger problem. In fact, at Accenture, we had a proprietary solution that was leading edge, so we thought. And we wanted to test it with one of our clients, but we did some internal work and actually found an InsurTech solution that we thought was just as good. So we did a bake-off. We tested the Accenture solution against the other solution, and theirs was better. It outperformed the Accenture solution. So we have now partnered with them along with one of the other cloud providers and have provided the total package and are now testing it at our client as a proof of concept. But I think the only way it resonated with the client is that it made it easy for them to understand how we were solving the bigger problem and not just one specific problem.
Yeah, I think having worked a number of years on the carrier side, I felt really up close a number of the challenges, many of which have already been mentioned. To throw out, I guess, a new one, which maybe even is an industry challenge, I guess, for insurance is one of talent. Getting kind of the right talent to the industry, can be difficult. I think there's even been a couple of jokes from the panel in terms of, insurance maybe not being seen as an industry that talent would want to naturally come to. I think there's certainly a lot of kind of really interesting problems within the insurance industry. It would be great to see that we could bring more talent to the insurance industry to try and come up with these new kind of innovative solutions to these problems that we have. But I think definitely we could do with a lot more talent, and I think that would help us with kind of overcoming a number of the challenges which we're all talking about.
If we could stay on talent just for 1 second.
Sure, go ahead.
There's definitely a war on talent. I might hear my clients talk about it a lot because the underwriters are becoming almost dinosaurs, or unicorns, I should say, hard to find, hard to keep. And at the same time, they're being asked to do a lot more, especially with the new risks, new sources of data, new technology that's coming in. So how do you not only keep your underwriters, but also equip them and train them to be able to manage those new solutions is definitely a significant challenge for them. And any way that you can make your solution easier for the underwriter, the more successful it's going to be. Because what we find is that, another data point from the survey is that on average, underwriters work in the commercial space within 9 different applications. So they know the legacy application, they know the new application, but those folks are retiring and leaving the space, so having to navigate those legacy applications by newer talent is definitely becoming a challenge. So again, having a solution that integrates seamlessly with legacy applications, new applications, is easier for the underwriters, especially the UI for the underwriters. Most of the focus has been on the external customer-facing user experience. Not a lot of investment on the internal customer-facing user experience. And I think that's where the focus has been, because only when the UI is easy to navigate can those new talent that they're trying to recruit stay within their jobs and navigate their jobs successfully.
I would even say, we keep talking about the employee experience, and I was saying earlier of the importance of testing with customers. It applies whether it's an agent platform. To me, the customer experience is driven by the employee experience, right? And you can test and you can validate internally with those teams. And the big thing of adoption, we're talking about, the idea of change management, 6,000 platforms, and then going on to a different one. Most people are not open to change. It's just human nature. So by co-creating with them, getting them involved and getting their input as you go really does help the adoption and eases the pain. I hear stories all the time, the best new platform, whatever it might be, the best UI, but it wasn't adopted, people left, things like that. So again, the human emotion aspect of driving it.
Awesome, thanks Josh. Before we move on, had a question that caught me a little off guard that came on, and before I kicked to Tom, someone in the audience asked if you had ever considered a career in recording your voice for audiobooks.
Tom.
Yeah, I have to agree, very, very soothing.
I would not impose that upon anyone, so yeah, no, I have not considered.
All right, well, staying with you, and for the sake of the audience, can you discuss the role of data analytics and predictive modeling in insurance innovation? And then a secondary question, how do these tools help insurers better understand and assess risks, leading to more accurate pricing and personalized coverage?
Yeah, I would love to. It's a great question. I think it's interesting as we consider kind of, I guess, the essence of insurance is to transfer the possibility of a loss for a fee. And I guess it's the age-old question that insurance carriers have is, what is the right fee? What is the right premium that needs to be charged? I think as we consider kind of data, big data in particular, predictive modeling, I think we're seeing a lot of evidence that this is helping insurance carriers be able to price and quantify risk far better. I think it's definitely to the benefit of both insureds having more equitable premiums, to the benefit of insurance carriers being able to manage their balance sheet and the risk that they're taking far better. I think as we think kind of what is the traditional approach to compare and contrast, I guess, to this maybe new world that's coming of big data and predictive modeling, I think a traditional approach would probably be having a ton of pricing actuaries working on, claim data. Maybe they would be breaking it off into different cohorts of similar looking stuff. They would probably be having claim development functions to be able to work out how a developed claim looks. They're probably looking at different rating across time to be able to normalize that, maybe splitting up into attrition, large, and catastrophe, maybe even building stochastic models with, I don't know, frequency and severity assumptions and such. And that's pretty much what, various carriers would be doing as part of that risk quantification process. But I think as we look forward in terms of what we're seeing a lot of carriers doing today and aspiring to do more of, when you've got all of this extra data, which is just augmenting it with so much more than what they would typically have within their normal claim kind of databases. We've certainly worked with third-party companies who have petabytes worth of data, which is just inconceivable that much data would have been used years ago. And then thinking about augmenting all of the information that you have with these petabytes worth of data and running huge models, whether it be machine learning, deep learning, to be able to work out what insights, what kind of indicators there are for being able to predict things that weren't predictable before is really encouraging, I think, for the industry. I think there's probably a few cautions that we need to be aware of. I think probably one of my kids could probably download Python and a few open source kind of models and be able to run these things themselves. It doesn't mean that they'd be good just because they've used new things. I think just because there's I guess a correlation doesn't mean there's a causation, if that makes sense. And I think that's where really augmenting the traditional with the new is really important, that insurance carriers just have such a deep understanding of their risks, of their insureds. And I think as they slowly start, well, they already have, but as they increasingly start taking these new methods and augmenting them, I think it's just going to be far better for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, and even like on the data analytics side at my prior employer, we spent some time, how do we leverage big data? I know that was a big buzzword like 5-6 years ago. How do we leverage big data and insights for distribution? And so obviously, Tom, everything you talked about, and by the way, if you need a manager for your voiceover career, I'm here for you. It's one of those things of like, we were looking at a lot of data, and like our industry is now swimming in data, looking at how do we improve the efficiency and productivity of our wholesaling force not by just hiring more bodies, but help them sell smarter. And we kind of started with looking at some of the data of what was selling, what was not, and it got to the point where we were telling them where to hunt, but not how to hunt. And so that was the one big thing that was kind of an epiphany for us like 5-6 years ago, is it's not just understanding the data and building models, but what do you do with it? How do you make that into actionable insights? And so, we were starting, before I left, we were working on a model that, for our internal wholesalers, that leveraged a lot of the data we had from our third-party advisors. And when someone called up and matched a couple of attributes, it gave them 2 suggestions on what to say or what to do. And that was kind of a step in our evolutionary journey of looking at leveraging data and analytics into actionable insights. Because I'll never forget, like, one of the top wholesalers at my prior company told me, just tell me where to go. I have the elephant gun. Just tell me where the elephants are. So I think depending on what type of person you're helping with that big data or those insights, some need to be told where to go, but some need to be told how to do it.
The only thing I would add is that, I referenced earlier that the amount of data that insurance carriers have is astounding. But I think one of the challenges that they still struggle with is not necessarily the use of data, because what we've seen is that they have data and putting it into data lakes, and then using other, like RPA, to move data along the workflow, and then even the ability to cleanse data effectively. But what is still a struggle, especially on the commercial side, is the ingestion of data seamlessly, because you still have a significant number of resources offshore who are keying in information data elements manually to then be able to repurpose it for the predictive analytics and the modeling, et cetera. And we've seen some AI solutions on the ingestion piece, more successful on the claim side, because most of the claims information comes in structured formats, whereas even on the personal lines, it's a little bit more straightforward, where you're able to quickly be able to capture data digitally from the end customer. But on the commercial side, you're still dealing with large proposals and brokerage documents that somebody still is keying in manually today in either Manila, India, or somewhere offshore. And that's where operational cost is really impacting carriers. In fact, 30 cents of every premium dollar is still spent on operations, which is higher than most other financial service industries. So what we're seeing is that although we've been using AI tools to capture some core data elements, especially on claims and some of the other structured formats, accord forms, for example, where there's still a significant struggle is that where there's brokers who put their documents in any form that they want. One of my clients, we kind of counted the number of formats that the proposals were coming over in, and it was upwards of 1,500 different formats. You're asking an AI solution to be able to recognize, capture those important data elements, and be able to get those into downstream applications. But luckily, what we've seen within the last year are more sophisticated AI models that are able to discern the nuances within those different various formats and be able to accurately understand that this is a premium amount versus, a revenue amount in terms of the data elements that are still coming in on paper, manual document formats. So once you get it in, yes, you're able to do a lot of the predictive analytics using some of the tools, but still a struggle, especially on the commercial side on the ingestion point.
Yeah, and I know we're just about at time. We got started a little late. Do we have permission for a couple Q&A questions? We good? Okay, cool. I will read off one of these from the audience. I'll start with this one. Probably, Trina, to you to start. And I'm interested as well, being in the consulting industry and working with insurance companies as clients. You've mentioned between 150 to 6,000 applications at your client sites. How often are your clients doing application rationalization exercises to get rid of redundancies?
I'm actually proposing some work right now to help them rationalize a lot of their applications for one of my clients. It's a significant challenge. I think they've gone through, two things. We've seen a lot of focus on app rationalization and also vendor rationalization. Two of my clients right now have about 200 vendors in their technology space, right? Niche vendors, certain solution providers. They're trying to take that 200 down to about 50. So again, when I referenced looking for partners who can provide end-to-end solutions, ecosystem partners, there's definitely a focus within the carriers to not only streamline their technology landscape into fewer systems and applications, but also streamline the number of partners and vendors that they have supporting them. So I think as you try to either develop a solution or go to market with a product or service to a carrier, you need to be able to articulate how that solution or system will buy into their ability to simplify and streamline.
Thanks, Trina. And I think we'll probably have time for one more. So we'll wrap it up here, and I think several of the panelists might have some answers or some feedback on this one. So I'll start with Tom first, but is InsurTech fundamentally a means to aggregate, scrub, and interpret multiple sources of data for the purpose of evaluating risk?
It would be part of what an InsurTech company could do. I think the definition of insurtech is, could be broader than that. But I would definitely suggest that there's a ton of companies who would probably label themselves insurtech in that space who would be doing that as a core competency. But I think nowadays the word insurtech seems to be used far more broader than that. I think it almost covers any company that uses a kind of modern technology stack of some description and looking to kind of implement that tooling in the insurance space. So I would say definitely for sure there's a number of insurtechs doing that, but I think there's a broader kind of array of insurtechs doing that and other things, or just other things and not that, for sure.
I definitely think there's a trend now towards not only using data within the insurance underwriting process, but using data to help the insured prevent the catastrophe or risk in the first place. So essentially preventative measures. Just like the wellness industry or the health industry, you don't want to necessarily have to treat the sickness, you want to prevent the sickness from the onset. So what we're seeing with a lot of carriers is that how can I use the data that I have that is more informative to help my insured prevent the catastrophe or risk from happening in the first place. I think that's definitely a recent trend that I've seen, kind of the preventative solutions and tools and the use of data within the insurance space.
And one that makes a lot of sense. We do a lot of research on the customer perspective, and you constantly hear, particularly younger generations, we want more than a great claim. We want more than a smooth claim, more than a product. We want preventative. Help me. Again, it goes back to that value prop of insurance. It isn't just to make sure when something goes wrong. It is, the livelihood of people or business owners, whatever it might be. That's the new expectation, and it's good to hear that there is a movement internally to do that. To me, that's the beauty of the product, beauty of insurance.
And making it easier for them, because I think part of what, if we think about when you underwrite and you ask a new homeowner, what type of roof do you have? Like, I don't know what type of roof I have. I have a roof, I don't know the material that it's made out of. And traditionally, we've asked homeowners what type of material it is. So now what we're seeing is that there's other ways to get that same information other than just asking somebody their roof type. You can understand, who built their house, what the fabrication is from their house, or even drones can determine the roof type without even having to ask the customer for that data to help then accurately price their risk.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all. I think we have a couple more questions, but we're not going to be able to get to them. I think there's some folks trickling in and a whole bunch more activities to get to. So appreciate everyone joining. Thank you to our amazing panelists, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.